The truth was always there, buried quietly in the corners of her life, waiting for the day when it would no longer remain hidden. But for years, she lived without knowing. To her, he was just her uncle, a man of few words, simple clothes, and tired eyes. He walked with the weight of someone who had seen too much and spoken too little. She never suspected the truth, that her uncle's love had carried her further than she ever imagined, that he had built her life with his own hands while silently breaking his own. She never knew the truth about her uncle until this day. That's how the story begins, not in the moment of revelation, but in the long years of silence that came before it. When Anna was a child, her world was small but bright. She grew up in a modest house on the edge of town, with peeling paint on the walls and a leaky roof that groaned when it rained. Yet in her eyes, it was a castle. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread, though most days it was nothing more than toast and tea. Her uncle, Daniel, always made it seem like a feast. He was not a man who spoke much, but he made sure her days were filled with warmth. When she scraped her knee, he cleaned the wound with careful hands. When she had nightmares, he sat by her bed until sleep returned. When she drew pictures with broken crayons, he pinned them to the fridge as if they were priceless works of art. He made her believe she was the most important person in the world, though she never stopped to wonder what it cost him. To everyone else, Daniel was an ordinary man. He worked late shifts at the factory, fixed neighbors' fences for a little extra cash, and walked to work no matter the weather. No one asked much about him, and he never volunteered details. He was the kind of man the world passed by without noticing. But inside that silence, he carried a secret Anna would not discover until years later. As a child, she simply thought of him as her quiet guardian. She didn't ask why her parents weren't around. She accepted the story he gave her, that life had handed her to him, and that was enough. And so she grew, unaware of the countless sacrifices he made just out of sight. There was one memory, though, that would one day come back to her. She had been 7, running through the small living room with a doll clutched to her chest. Her uncle had been at the kitchen table, counting coins into a jar. She asked him what he was doing, and he smiled faintly. Saving for the future, he said. At the time, she didn't think much of it. She skipped away, humming to herself. Years later, that jar would return in her memory, a symbol of all she never saw. Because the truth is, every coin he saved came with a cost. And though she never knew it then, those small moments were pieces of a much larger sacrifice. Anna's childhood unfolded in colors brighter than the world her uncle lived in. She had friends at school, teachers who praised her drawings, and afternoons spent playing in the park. She came home to warm meals, never wondering how they appeared on the table. She slept soundly, never worrying about bills or rent notices slipped under the door. Her uncle shielded her from it all. When the factory cut hours, he took on extra jobs. When his hands ached from long shifts, he ignored the pain. When he grew weary of the endless struggle to stretch money, he said nothing. And when he looked at her, he smiled. She saw his tired eyes, but never thought to ask why they were tired. She heard him cough at night, but never thought to ask about the smoke-filled factory air that ate away at his lungs. She saw the frayed edges of his coat, but never thought to wonder why he never bought himself a new one. In her world, he was simply there, a quiet constant, a man who fixed her broken toys with tape and glue, a man who made sure she had what she needed. It never crossed her mind that every gift, every school trip, every book she brought home had been bought with something he gave up for himself. And so she grew. She dreamed of becoming something more. Her teachers told her she had potential. She imagined a life far beyond the small town, where the horizon stretched wide with possibilities. She believed it was her own determination carrying her forward. She believed she was building her own future. But behind her, always just out of sight, was the man who made it possible. The man whose sacrifices she never saw. The man whose truth she never knew. Not until that day. And that day was coming. The day when she would learn that her uncle was not simply a quiet, ordinary man. That he had given up more than she could ever repay. That he had lived not for himself, but for her. The day she would discover that not all heroes wear capes. Some wear old coats. Some carry tired eyes. Some walk quietly through the world, unnoticed, until the truth finally comes to light. Anna's world was painted in light. At school, she was the child with a quick smile and an imagination that refused to stay inside the lines of her notebooks. She loved stories, loved colors, loved creating entire worlds out of nothing more than paper and pencil. Her teachers encouraged her, praising her drawings, telling her she had a gift. And she believed them. She believed her future was hers to shape, that the only thing between her and her dreams was how hard she was willing to try. She didn't realize there was someone else shaping that future long before she even knew what it meant. Her Uncle Daniel. Every morning, he woke up before dawn. The alarm clock on his nightstand was missing a button, but it never failed to ring at 4:30 a.m. He would sit on the edge of his bed for a moment, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, before pulling on the same faded work jacket he had worn for years. The elbows were worn thin, the zipper crooked, but it was all he had. In the kitchen, he would make Anna's lunch before she even stirred from her sleep. A sandwich, an apple, sometimes a cookie if he had managed to spare the money for it. He would leave it on the counter with a note. "Have a good day at school. Proud of you." Anna never questioned where the food came from. She never wondered why her friends had elaborate lunches while hers were simple. To her, they were more than enough. Daniel would then head to the factory. The air inside was always heavy, filled with the smell of grease and metal. His hands grew callous from lifting, pulling, and fixing. His back ached, his lungs protested, but he never slowed down. Each paycheck barely covered the essentials: rent, utilities, groceries, school fees. But he stretched it. Somehow, he always made it stretch. When shifts were cut, he picked up odd jobs around town, fixing fences, repairing roofs, unclogging drains. People paid little, sometimes just with food, but he took it anyway, because every coin mattered. At night, when Anna was asleep, he would sit at the kitchen table with that same glass jar she had once seen. He would empty the coins from his pocket, line up the small bills, and count them slowly. It was never much, but to him, it was a foundation, saving for the future, he had once told her. And it was true. He wasn't saving for himself. He was saving for her, for the life she didn't even know she wanted yet. Anna, meanwhile, blossomed. She loved her school's art classes most of all. One year, her drawing was chosen to hang in the town library. She beamed with pride, pointing it out to her uncle when he took her to see it. Daniel stood there, staring at the framed picture with tired eyes that glistened just a little. He didn't say much, just nodded and said, "You've got a gift, Anna." She never noticed the roughness of his hands as they rested on her shoulder. She didn't realize those hands had bled and blistered, so she could afford pencils and paints. She simply basked in the praise. And Daniel let her, because to him, her joy was worth every sacrifice. There were moments, though, when Anna glimpsed pieces of his struggle without understanding them. Like the winter when the heater broke. She remembered waking up shivering, pulling the blanket tighter around her. Daniel wrapped her in his own coat, the one with the worn elbows, and told her not to worry. "I'll fix it." She didn't notice that he spent the night awake, hammering, patching, and rigging the old heater to last through the season. She didn't know that he had skipped meals to afford the parts. Or the spring when she begged him for a school trip to the city. The cost was steep, and she saw his hesitation. But a week later, the money appeared in an envelope on the counter. She assumed it had been there all along. She didn't know that he had spent nights hauling boxes at the warehouse just to make it happen. Every victory in her life was stitched together with threads of his sacrifice, and she never saw it. Years passed. Anna entered her teenage years, full of dreams and stubbornness. She wanted more than the small town could offer. She wanted to paint, to travel, to study in places where art wasn't just a subject, but a way of life. "Uncle, I want to apply to the city academy," she announced one evening, her eyes glowing with determination. Daniel paused. His fork hovered over his plate, his shoulders stiffening. The academy was prestigious, expensive, far beyond anything they could reasonably afford. But when he looked at her, he saw the same fire that had once lived inside him, long before life had dimmed it. And he couldn't bring himself to say no. "All right," he said softly. "We'll find a way." Anna squealed, hugging him tightly. She didn't notice the shadow that crossed his face when she let go. She didn't see the weight that settled on his shoulders as he wondered how he would ever make it possible. That night, after she went to bed, he sat at the kitchen table again. The jar was almost empty. The bills had piled higher than ever. He rubbed his hands over his face, exhaustion etched into every line. But then he glanced at the fridge, at the drawing she had pinned there. Bright colors, wild shapes, her name scrawled in the corner. And he knew he couldn't let her dreams die. So he made a choice. He would work harder. He would give up more. He would carry the weight of her future on his back, no matter what it cost him. Anna never knew the nights he spent at the warehouse after finishing long shifts at the factory. She never knew the pain in his chest that grew sharper with each passing winter. She never knew the way his body ached from pushing beyond its limits. She only knew that her uncle always said yes. Yes, you can join that art class. Yes, you can buy those supplies. Yes, you could dream bigger. And with every yes, she soared higher. But fate has a way of making truths impossible to hide forever. And though Anna lived in the light, the shadows were beginning to catch up. The truth her uncle had hidden so carefully was inching closer, waiting for the day when she would finally see it. And when that day came, it would shatter everything she thought she knew, only to rebuild it into something far greater. Because love, the kind that sacrifices in silence, cannot stay hidden forever. And Anna was about to learn that her uncle had been carrying her all along. By the time Anna turned 17, her dreams had outgrown the town. The small art competitions and library showcases no longer satisfied her. She wanted more, to step into a world where art wasn't just a hobby, but a future. The City Academy had accepted her application for review, and she was buzzing with anticipation. She sketched at the breakfast table, on the bus, in the margins of her notebooks. She filled page after page with color, convinced that this was the path she was meant to walk. Daniel encouraged her with every nod and quiet word. But behind his tired eyes, a storm was gathering. The Academy's tuition was more than he made in a year. He knew at the moment he looked at the papers that arrived in the mail. The numbers swam before his eyes, cruel and unyielding. But he folded the paper neatly, tucked it into a drawer, and said nothing. Because to him, the question was never if. It was only how. The days grew longer, and so did his shifts. He worked at the factory by day, the warehouse by night, and odd jobs whenever he could find them. His hands cracked and bled from the endless labor. His back groaned with each movement. At night, when the world was quiet, he coughed into his sleeve, muffling the sounds so Anna wouldn't hear. But she did sometimes. She would pass by his room on her way to the bathroom and hear the low rumble of his coughs. She would frown, pause, but then keep walking. He always brushed it off with a wave of his hand when she asked. "Just a little cold," he said. She believed him. She had no reason not to. One evening, Anna came home with a letter in her hands. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes glowing with excitement. "Uncle," she called, racing into the kitchen where he was hunched over the table with bills spread before him. He quickly shuffled the papers into a pile, forcing a smile as she held out the envelope. "They want me to come for an interview," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with joy. "The Academy wants to meet me in person." Daniel's chest tightened. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he took the paper from her. That's wonderful, Anna," he said softly. And it was, but he knew what it meant. Another mountain to climb, travel expenses, proper clothes, fees he couldn't yet imagine. Still, he looked at her radiant face and knew there was no choice. He would make it happen. Somehow, the weeks that followed pushed him past his limits. He borrowed money, quietly, from neighbors who trusted his honesty. He worked until his body begged for rest, until his bones ached as if they were splintering under the weight. At the warehouse, he carried boxes heavier than he should have, ignoring the sharp pain in his chest. At the factory, he skipped breaks to earn a little extra. At night, he walked home in the cold, his breath ragged, but he never let Anna see his weakness. He told her stories instead, simple ones about hard work and perseverance. You have to fight for your dreams, he said one evening as she painted at the kitchen table. His voice was hoarse, but his eyes burned with conviction. Never let anyone tell you they're too big. She smiled, dipping her brush into the paint. I won't, Uncle. I promise. She thought he was encouraging her. She didn't realize he was talking about himself, about the battle he was waging behind the scenes to keep her dreams alive. The day of the interview arrived. Anna stood in front of the mirror, nervous but excited. Her dress was simple but neat, pressed carefully by her uncle the night before. She turned, frowning slightly. I wish I had something nicer to wear, she murmured. Daniel walked in, holding a small box. His hands shook as he opened it, revealing a delicate necklace silver with a tiny charm shaped like a star. Here, he said, fastening it around her neck. For luck. Anna's eyes widened. Where did you get this? He smiled faintly. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you shine. She didn't know he had sold his father's old watch to buy it. The one thing of value he had kept all these years. She didn't know that giving it up hurt him more than he let show. But when she hugged him tightly and whispered, "Thank you," he felt it was worth it. The interview went well. Better than well. Anna came back glowing, full of stories about the professors who praised her portfolio and the students she had met. She was on the edge of something life-changing, and she knew it. Daniel listened, nodding, his chest swelling with pride. But behind his pride, fear gnawed at him, because he knew the bills would come soon. He knew the tuition, the living costs, the endless stream of expenses. He knew he was already drowning, and still he said nothing. He carried the burden alone, because he wanted her to soar without the weight of his struggle dragging her down. But the body can only bear so much. One night, as he walked home from the warehouse, the world tilted around him. His vision blurred, his chest tightened, and he stumbled against the cold brick wall of a building. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. His hand clawed at his chest, his breath ragged. He sank to the ground, gasping as the night air closed in. It passed after a few terrifying minutes, leaving him weak and trembling. He pushed himself up, brushing the dirt from his clothes, and forced his legs to move again. When he got home, Anna was already asleep. He stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe peacefully under the blanket, and he whispered to himself, "Just a little longer. Hold on just a little longer." Anna noticed the changes, though she didn't understand them. His face grew thinner, his eyes more hollow. He moved slower, as if each step weighed more than it should. "Uncle, are you okay?" she asked one evening. "Of course," he said with a smile. "Just tired." She nodded, accepting his words. She had dreams to chase, and she trusted him too much to look deeper. But the truth was there, hiding in plain sight. The sacrifices were piling higher, the cost greater than ever. And the day was coming when she would see it all, when the walls of his silence would finally crack. Because no matter how carefully secrets are hidden, love has a way of revealing itself. And when it did, Anna's world would never be the same. The letter from the academy arrived in early spring. Anna tore it open with trembling hands, her heart racing as she scanned the words. Her breath caught, her eyes widened, and then she screamed a sound of pure joy that echoed through the small house. "I got in," she cried, running into the kitchen where Daniel was washing dishes. "Uncle, I got in. They've accepted me." She flung herself into his arms, laughter spilling out of her like sunlight. Daniel held her tightly, his throat thick with emotion. His tired hands pressed against her back, his heart pounding not from excitement, but from fear. Because as much as he wanted this for her, he knew what it meant. The bills would be bigger than anything he had faced before. The debts already pressed down like stones. But he pushed the thoughts aside, burying them beneath her joy. "You did it, Anna," he whispered. "I'm so proud of you." And he meant it. Every word. The months that followed were a blur of preparations. Forms to fill out, supplies to purchase, travel to arrange. Anna was buzzing with energy, living in a world of possibilities. Daniel, meanwhile, lived in a world of numbers, calculations that never seemed to add up. He pawned tools, worked extra shifts, borrowed again from neighbors. He aged in those months more than he had in years. His shoulders stooped, his cough deepened, his eyes grew shadowed. but he never let her see. When she looked at him, she saw the same quiet strength she had always known. The man who always had an answer, who always made things work. She never saw the cracks spreading wider each day. Graduation day arrived. Anna stood before the mirror in her cap and gown, adjusting the tassel with nervous fingers. Her heart raced with pride. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the bridge between her small-town life and the bigger world she had always dreamed of. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching her. His chest ached, his breath shallow, but his eyes softened with pride. "You look beautiful," he said. She smiled, her eyes misting. "I couldn't have done this without you, Uncle." He looked away, blinking back tears. She had no idea how true her words were. The ceremony was held in the school auditorium, decorated with banners and flowers. Families filled the rows, laughter and chatter buzzing through the air. Anna sat with her classmates, excitement bubbling in her chest. When her name was called, she walked across the stage, her steps steady but her heart soaring. The diploma was placed in her hands, the applause loud, the moment surreal. She scanned the crowd, searching for the face she wanted most to see. And there he was, her uncle, standing at the back of the room. His clothes were worn, his shoulders bent, but his eyes shone with a pride so fierce it cut straight through her. She smiled at him, lifting her diploma as if to say, "This is ours." What she didn't see was the way he leaned against the wall for support, his chest rising with effort, his body betraying him even as his spirit stood strong. After the ceremony, students gathered with their families, laughter and hugs filling the air. Cameras flashed, flowers were handed out, voices rang with joy. Anna searched the crowd until she found him, standing a little apart, his hands in his pockets. "Uncle," she called, running toward him. She threw her arms around him, clutching her diploma tightly. "We did it!" He hugged her, holding her longer than usual, as if memorizing the feel of her in his arms. "I'm proud of you, Anna," he said softly. She pulled back, studying him. For the first time, she noticed the pallor of his skin, the hollowness of his cheeks, the weariness etched into every line of his face. "Uncle, are you okay?" she asked, her voice hesitant. He forced a smile. "Just tired, sweetheart. Don't you worry." But something in his eyes gave him away. Something she couldn't ignore anymore. That evening, back at the house, Anna found the drawer half open in his room. She had never snooped before, but something pulled her closer. Inside were stacks of bills, some unpaid, some overdue, letters from creditors, notes scribbled in his rough handwriting. She flipped through them with trembling hands, her heart sinking deeper with each page. And then she saw the records of payments made to the academy, amounts that made her head spin, money she knew he didn't have. Her breath caught. She sank to the floor, the papers slipping from her fingers. All those nights, he came home late. All those mornings he left before dawn. The coughs, the exhaustion, the weariness he always brushed aside. It all came together in a crashing wave of realization. Her uncle had sacrificed everything for her. Tears blurred her vision as she stumbled to the kitchen, where he sat at the table, his head resting in his hand. He looked up as she entered, startled by the sight of the papers clutched in her fists. "Anna," he began, but his voice broke. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "All this time, you've been carrying it alone." He looked at her, his eyes filled with both sorrow and love. "Because it wasn't your burden," he said simply. "It was mine. My job was to make sure you had a chance, to give you the life you deserve." Her tears spilled over, falling fast. She crossed the room, dropping the papers, and fell into his arms. "You gave up everything for me," she sobbed. He held her tightly, his own tears wetting her hair. "Not everything," he murmured. "I still have you, and that's all I ever wanted." For the first time, Anna saw her uncle not just as the quiet man who raised her, but as the hero who had carried her dreams on his back. Every opportunity she had, every victory she claimed, was because he had been willing to sacrifice himself. She pulled back, her eyes fierce through the tears. "From now on, we carry it together," she said firmly. "No more secrets, no more sacrifices in silence. We face it side by side. Daniel smiled faintly, his tired eyes shining. You've grown strong, Anna. Stronger than I ever imagined. She shook her head. Because of you. Always because of you. And in that moment, the truth stood between them. Not as a shadow, but as a bond unbreakable. The world outside their small home kept spinning, but inside, everything had changed. Anna knew now. She knew the weight her uncle had carried, the price he had paid, the love that had shaped every step of her journey. And though the road ahead was uncertain, she vowed that he would never carry it alone again. Because love, the kind that sacrifices everything, is not meant to stay hidden. It is meant to be shared, honored, remembered. And Anna would never forget. The night Anna uncovered the truth about her uncle's sacrifices, sleep did not come easily. She lay awake, the ceiling above her blurring with tears that came in waves. Every memory replayed itself through new eyes. The times he had brushed off his cough, the way he avoided answering questions about money, the extra shifts, the hollow look in his eyes. He had carried her future on his shoulders while quietly falling apart. By dawn, Anna sat up in bed with a new resolve hardening inside her. The years of blindness were over. She could no longer live in the bliss of ignorance. She owed him more than gratitude. She owed him her strength, her partnership, her future. That morning, she found him already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with his coffee. The light from the window caught the lines etched deep into his face, the silent testimony of years of labor. "Uncle," she said softly, sitting across from him. "Things are going to change." He raised an eyebrow, weary but curious. "From now on, I'm not just your niece. I'm your partner," she said. "We face everything together. I know you wanted to protect me, but we're stronger side by side. You've carried me this far. Let me help carry you." His eyes softened, a flicker of protest rising but fading quickly under the weight of her conviction. "You've grown," he whispered, almost to himself. "Your mother would have been proud." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time she did not break. She held his gaze, steady and strong. "She will be proud of you too," she said. "You've been more than an uncle. You've been everything." The months that followed were different from anything either of them had known before. Anna began working part-time jobs around town while preparing for the academy. She painted signs for shops, babysat children, even sketched portraits at the park for a few dollars. Every coin she earned, she brought home, setting it beside his jar, the same jar he had filled alone for years. Now it was theirs together. Daniel tried at first to argue, to wave away her efforts, but she wouldn't let him. "This is what family means," she told him. "You carried me. Now I carry us." And though his pride stung, his heart swelled. For the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Anna also began telling their story in quiet ways at school, among friends, in small art circles. She spoke not just of her dreams, but of the man who had made them possible. Her words carried power because they were born from truth. One day, her art teacher approached her after class, eyes shining. "Anna, the way you speak of your uncle, the love, the sacrifice, you need to put that into your work. Let your paintings tell that story." And she did. Her sketches shifted, no longer just abstract swirls of color or still life scenes. Now they breathed with emotion, the rough hands of a man dropping coins into a jar, the silhouette of a figure watching proudly from the back of a crowded hall, the tired but unbreakable eyes of a hero who never asked for recognition. Her art became not only hers, but theirs. The Academy welcomed her, impressed by her raw talent and the new depth in her work. But she never forgot where she came from. She traveled to the city with her uncle by her side, his shoulders still bent, but his steps steadier now that he no longer walked alone. On campus, while others introduced parents or guardians, Anna introduced Daniel with pride. "This is my uncle, the man who gave me everything." At first, he shifted uncomfortably under the attention and used a praise. But as the months passed, he began to see through her eyes that his life had not been small, that his sacrifices were not invisible. He was part of something greater. Years rolled on, and Anna grew into her place as an artist. Her work began to gain recognition. her exhibitions drawing crowds who felt the emotion woven into every brushstroke. She painted stories of sacrifice, of ordinary heroes, of the quiet love that changes lives. At every exhibition, there was one painting she always displayed at the center, a portrait of her uncle. Not grand or polished, but raw and real. His tired face, his weathered hands, his steady gaze. She titled it simply, "Not All Heroes Wear Capes." The first time Daniel stood before that painting, surrounded by strangers admiring it, tears slid silently down his cheeks. He turned to Anna, his voice trembling. "You've made me immortal," he whispered. "No," she said, slipping her hand into his. "You did that yourself. I'm just showing the world what I've always known." Their home, once filled with unspoken burdens, became a place of shared strength. The debts, though heavy, no longer seemed insurmountable. Together, they faced them one by one. Together, they built a life not just of survival, but of meaning. Anna often thought back to the girl she had been naive, carefree, blind to the truth standing before her. That girl no longer existed. She had been remade by revelation, forged by love and sacrifice into someone stronger. And though she could never repay her uncle fully, she carried his legacy in every brushstroke, every story she told, every success she claimed. One summer evening, years later, they sat on the porch together watching the sunset bleed gold and crimson across the horizon. Daniel's hair was grayer now, his movements slower, but his spirit remained. "Do you ever regret it?" Anna asked softly. He turned to her, puzzled. "All the sacrifices, the things you gave up." He smiled, shaking his head. "Not for a second. Seeing you become who you are now, that was the only dream I ever had left." Her throat tightened as she leaned against him. "Then I promise you, Uncle, your dream will never be wasted. Everything I do, everything I create will carry you in it. Always." And in the fading light, with the weight of years between them and the future stretching ahead, they sat together in peace. Because the truth was no longer hidden. The sacrifices were no longer silent. And love, the kind that gives everything without asking in return, had done what it always does. It had transformed not just one life, but two.
Not all heroes wear capes.